Hello, my name is Andrew, and welcome to Sleepy School. Each night, I'll read you a story filled with history, science, and wonder, told slowly, so you can learn and drift off at the same time. Before we begin, I always love to know, where in the world are you listening from? I read every comment, and it makes me smile to imagine all the places people are falling asleep tonight. If you're new here, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us grow and lets me keep bringing you a fresh bedtime lecture every evening. Now, settle in, take a slow breath, and let's begin tonight's story. Tonight we walk into a place that has been both myth and reality, a place of dazzling lights and deep shadows, a word that has come to mean both glamour and ruin, Hollywood, or as some critics once called it, Babylon. Close your eyes and imagine Los Angeles at the turn of the 20th century. It is not yet a city of freeways and skyscrapers. It is still sleepy, filled with citrus groves and rolling hills. Farmers ride wagons down dusty roads. The air smells of orange blossoms and eucalyptus trees. And then, almost overnight, the movie people arrive. At first, they are just a handful of producers, escaping the East Coast, where Thomas Edison and his motion picture patents company try to control every film camera, every projector, every reel of film. But in Los Angeles, they find sunshine, they find open land, cheap labor, and endless backdrops. Mountains, deserts, seashores, all within a short drive. It is perfect. By 1910, the first movie is shot in a sleepy village called Hollywood. By the 1920s, it is the capital of film for the entire world. Imagine the boomtown feeling, streets filling with actors from Kansas and Ohio, from Ireland, Italy, and Russia, everyone chasing the dream of being discovered. Studios rise from the dust like temples. Fox, Paramount, Warner Brothers, Universal, each with its gates and its powerful moguls. And soon, a new royalty emerges, the movie star. The star system of the 1920s is unlike anything before. Fans line up for autographs, pictures of their idols tucked into newspapers and pinned above beds. Women copy the hairstyles of Clara Bow, the it girl. Men wear the mustaches of Douglas Fairbanks. Movies are no longer just entertainment. They are a dream factory, and the stars are its gods and goddesses. But behind the glitter is chaos. Hollywood is a frontier town dressed in silk. There are no rules for fame. Fortunes rise and fall overnight. Young actors discover sudden wealth and spend it in wild binges of champagne, cars, and jewels. Mansions climb into the hills. Parties spill into the streets, and scandals soon follow. The newspapers call Hollywood Babylon, a city of sin like the one in the Bible. And in some ways, they are not wrong. Prohibition is in effect across America, but in Hollywood, liquor flows freely. Bootleggers supply gin, whiskey, and champagne to every mansion. Directors and stars throw parties that last until dawn, filled with music, dancing, and reckless indulgence. Neighbors complain of noise. But secretly, they are just as eager for an invitation. One of the earliest and most infamous scandals arrives in 1921. Roscoe "Fatty" Arbuckle, a beloved comedian second only to Charlie Chaplin in fame, is accused of a terrible crime at a San Francisco party. The case explodes in the press. Though Arbuckle is eventually acquitted, his career is destroyed. To the public, the trial becomes proof that Hollywood is rotten at its core, a place where morals are easily lost in the glow of the spotlight. And yet, audiences cannot look away. The more the press condemns Hollywood, the more people buy tickets. Every headline of sin and scandal only adds to the allure. Hollywood becomes both heaven and hell, a modern Babylon. Meanwhile, the studios themselves grow powerful. They own not just the production of movies, but also the theaters where they are shown. They control the contracts of actors and directors, often dictating their public image. If a star had a secret the public might dislike, a drinking problem, a hidden romance, or even their true age, the studios covered it up. They planted stories in newspapers. They arranged fake dates and publicity marriages. They even hired detectives to keep watch on their own talent. To the audience, the stars looked perfect. But behind closed doors, many lived double lives. It is this duality, the beauty on the screen, the chaos behind it, that makes Hollywood of the 1920s so fascinating. The city glitters, and yet it trembles with danger. Young women arrive at train stations by the thousands, dreaming of stardom. Some are discovered, many are not. The dream feeds on hope and heartbreak. By the mid-1920s, Hollywood has become a symbol, a place where anyone might rise from obscurity to worldwide fame, but also a place where careers can vanish in an instant. The press continues to call it Babylon, and preachers across the country denounce it from their pulpits, warning of the corruption of movies. Yet movie palaces grow ever larger, with velvet seats, chandeliers and painted ceilings like cathedrals. The people cannot resist. The dream is too powerful. As the 1920s give way to the 1930s, sound arrives. The talkies. Voices suddenly leap from the screen. Some stars thrive. Others, whose voices do not match their faces, fade away. The world of Hollywood shifts again, growing louder, brighter, and even more intoxicating. And still, the stories of scandal continue. Mysterious deaths, secret affairs, deals made in smoky back rooms, all of it feeding the legend that Hollywood is more than a city. It is a Babylon reborn, and as you drift deeper into rest, imagine yourself there, walking down Hollywood Boulevard in the 1920s, the neon signs glowing against the night sky, the hum of traffic and the chatter of crowds. From a theater doorway spills the sound of applause, and you feel the strange mix of wonder and danger that defined this place. Hollywood was not just a dream, it was a dream with teeth. And tomorrow, we'll step deeper into its golden age and its darker secrets. The dream deepens, and Hollywood enters what we now call the Golden Age, the 1930s and 40s. If the 1920s had been the wild, roaring childhood of the movies, this was their adolescence, more structured, more polished, yet still filled with mischief behind the curtain. Picture yourself in Los Angeles in 1935. The Great Depression has left scars across America. Banks have failed, factories have closed, but in the movie theaters, there is escape. For just a nickel, you can sit beneath glittering chandeliers, sink into a velvet seat, and disappear into another world. The theater itself is a palace, marble columns, painted domes, plush curtains that rise like stage magic. To step inside is to leave behind hunger and worry. And Hollywood knew this. They fed audiences stories of hope, laughter, and romance. For 2 hours at a time, the Depression vanished. The studios perfected the dream factory in this era, MGM, with its roaring lion. Paramount, with its mountain of stars. Warner Brothers, specializing in tough gangsters and smoky jazz clubs. Each studio had its own personality, and each kept its stars under ironclad contracts. Imagine being signed to MGM in 1938. You are not just an employee. You belong to the studio. They choose your roles. They choose your clothes. They even choose your name. Lucille LeSueur became Joan Crawford. Frances Gumm became Judy Garland. Archibald Leach became Cary Grant. The transformation was part of the magic. Audiences never questioned it, because the studios knew exactly what kind of dream to sell. But control came with cost. The studios managed every detail of their stars' lives. If you gained weight, they sent you to a doctor. If you drank too much, they hired someone to shadow you. If you fell in love with the wrong person, they buried the story or staged another romance for the magazines. To the world, stars seemed perfect. But behind closed doors, many struggled under the pressure. One striking example is Judy Garland. Discovered as a teenager, she became a star overnight with The Wizard of Oz in 1939. Her voice soared, her smile sparkled, and audiences adored her. But behind the scenes, MGM executives worried about her weight and her energy. They gave her pills to keep her thin, other pills to help her sleep, and still others to wake her up again. The cycle was brutal, and it haunted her for her entire life. This darker side of studio control was rarely spoken of at the time, but it reveals just how carefully Hollywood constructed its Babylon. And yet, the films themselves glowed with artistry. Think of Clark Gable and Vivien Leigh in Gone with the Wind, Humphrey Bogart and Ingrid Bergman in Casablanca, Gene Kelly dancing in the rain. Audiences believed in love, in heroism, in beauty, because Hollywood gave it to them in Technicolor. The dream was irresistible. Meanwhile, the gossip industry was booming. Magazines like Photoplay and Modern Screen flew off the racks. They showed carefully staged photos of stars at home, watering the garden or playing with their children. Of course, many of these homes were rented for the day. The children sometimes borrowed from neighbors. It was illusion on top of illusion. But fans devoured it, clipping pictures, mailing letters, even visiting studio gates to wait for a glimpse. At night, the real Babylon emerged. The parties, the clubs, the places where studio chaperones loosened their grip. The Trocadero on the Sunset Strip, glowing with neon. The Macambo, where parrots perched above the bar. The Coconut Grove, where stars danced beneath papier-mâché palm trees. If you were lucky enough to slip inside, you might see Clark Gable smoking at one table, Rita Hayworth laughing at another, and Frank Sinatra crooning from the stage. These nights fed the myth of Hollywood as both glamorous and decadent, a playground for gods, and always. The scandals lurked. The studio system tried to bury them, but whispers always leaked. Affairs, secret marriages, hidden identities. One star's career could end overnight if the public learned too much. To protect themselves, the studios created what was known as the morality clause in contracts. If an actor's behavior brought disrepute, the studio could fire them instantly. This gave executives immense power, and it kept stars silent, even as their private lives burned. It was during this time that Hollywood also faced pressure from outside. In 1934, the production code, often called the Hays Code, was strictly enforced. Suddenly, movies could no longer show certain things. Too much skin, suggestive dances, depictions of crime that seemed glamorous. Writers had to become clever, hiding innuendo in witty dialogue and shadows. It is why films from the 30s and 40s often feel both innocent and suggestive at the same time. The rules forced creativity and added to the strange, intoxicating allure of Hollywood's Babylon. And yet, for all the control, all the rules, the dream only grew. By the late 1930s, movie attendance was staggering. Millions of people each week filled theaters. Some towns had just one screen, others had dozens, each with glowing marquees. The movies were no longer a novelty. They were the heartbeat of American culture. The Second World War only deepened this role. When soldiers shipped out to Europe and the Pacific, they carried with them pin-ups of Betty Grable and Rita Hayworth. At home, audiences watched newsreels before each feature, seeing the war through Hollywood's lens. Movies offered both comfort and courage. And the stars themselves pitched in, selling war bonds, performing for troops, and reminding Americans what they were fighting for. But war also changed the tone. By the 1940s, film noir emerged. Smoky, shadowed stories of crime and betrayal. The innocence of the early days had faded. Now the screen reflected a darker mood, one filled with suspicion and broken dreams. Once again, Babylon had shifted its mask. As you picture it, imagine standing outside Grauman's Chinese Theatre in 1942. The searchlights sweep across the sky, crowds press forward in their best clothes, flashbulbs pop as stars step from shining cars. The air smells of perfume and gasoline. Inside, the curtains part, and another dream flickers to life on the screen. Hollywood of the Golden Age was a machine of illusions. It produced beauty, laughter, romance, and wonder. But beneath the glow, it hid pain, secrecy, and control. The contrast was stark, and it is why, to this day, we speak of it with both admiration and unease, a Babylon that could dazzle and destroy in the same breath. And as your eyelids grow heavy, let the images of that golden era float in your mind. The velvet theatres, the sparkling gowns, the smoky clubs where music drifted until dawn. It was a time of dreams made larger than life. A time when Hollywood was not just a place, but a spell. The curtain lifts once more, and Hollywood moves into the 1950s. The Golden Age is beginning to fade, but the legend of Babylon is far from over. By now, the world has changed. The Second World War is over. Soldiers have come home. Suburbs spread out like endless grids. Television flickers in living rooms across America. And for the first time, the movies face a true rival. Imagine a family in 1953. They no longer have to drive into town to see a story. They can sit in their living room, turn a dial, and watch Lucille Ball laugh in I Love Lucy. The glow of the small screen feels intimate, cozy, affordable. For Hollywood, this is a threat. If people can stay home for free, why would they pay to visit the palace? The studios scrambled for answers. They offered bigger screens, brighter colors, booming sound, CinemaScope, Technicolor, epic productions like Ben-Hur and The Ten Commandments, films so massive they demanded the largest screens ever built. It was a race to outdo the little television set. But at the same time, cracks in the old system widened. In 1948, the Supreme Court had ruled against the studios in the Paramount decision. Until then, studios not only made movies, they also owned the theaters. They could guarantee their own films would be shown, shutting out competition. The court declared this illegal. Suddenly, the studios lost a major grip on power. Without that monopoly, profits shrank. Control slipped. The old dream factory was wobbling, and with control slipping, the carefully polished star system began to unravel. For decades, the studios had hidden scandals. They had hushed affairs, concealed addictions, and crafted public images that sparkled. But by the 1950s, gossip magazines and tabloids had grown bolder. They hunted for stories that studios could no longer suppress. The public still adored stars, but they also craved the shocking truth behind the glamour. One of the most famous examples was the life of Marilyn Monroe. She appeared like a goddess of light on the screen. Breathy voice, luminous beauty, a living dream. But behind that dream was a woman struggling with loneliness, failed marriages, and dependence on pills. The more she was adored, the more fragile she became. And when she died in 1962 at the age of 36, the myth of Hollywood's Babylon grew darker still. Other stars revealed the same duality. Montgomery Clift, brooding and beautiful, was injured in a car accident that disfigured his face. He continued acting, but his pain drove him to alcohol and pills. Elizabeth Taylor, dazzling on screen, lived through a string of marriages and health crises. The line between dream and disaster grew thinner and thinner. Meanwhile, television was reshaping culture itself. Families gathered around their sets not just for sitcoms, but for news. The McCarthy hearings, the Korean War, even the first launches into space. All came into the living room. Movies suddenly felt less essential. Box office attendance dropped. Hollywood Babylon was being forced to reinvent itself or fade. To compete, the industry leaned into spectacle. In the 1950s and 60s came the great historical epics: Spartacus, Cleopatra, Lawrence of Arabia, films so lavish they nearly bankrupted studios. And sometimes they did. The production of Cleopatra, starring Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton, cost so much money and dragged on for so long, it nearly destroyed 20th Century Fox. But the public devoured the gossip. Taylor and Burton's torrid romance filled magazines for years. Even when Hollywood stumbled, it still managed to feed Babylon. Behind the scenes, however, another revolution was taking place. Independent producers were rising. The old studio contracts had weakened. Actors and directors began to demand more freedom. No longer were stars locked for life into one studio. They could choose their projects. They could form their own companies. It was the beginning of a shift toward personal expression. and away from the assembly line of the dream factory. By the 1960s, a new generation of filmmakers was arriving. They were influenced by European cinema, by the French New Wave and Italian neo-realism. They wanted stories grittier, more real, more daring. Bonnie and Clyde shocked audiences with its violence. The Graduate spoke to the anxieties of young people in a changing world. Hollywood Babylon was evolving again, still decadent, still wild, but now more rebellious. And yet, even as the culture shifted, the myth of old Hollywood remained powerful. People looked back at the 1920s, 30s, and 40s with both nostalgia and suspicion. The glittering premieres, the velvet theaters, the scandals whispered but never fully told. That Babylon was both dream and warning. A reminder of how power and glamour can lift people up and also break them down. As you drift into the later decades, imagine the walk of fame being laid on Hollywood Boulevard. Stars pressed into the sidewalk, names frozen in pink terrazzo and brass. It is both a memorial and a promise. For every star who shone brightly, there were others who flickered out too soon. The sidewalk tells both stories at once. The truth is, Babylon never truly ended. It simply changed its shape. From the silent parties of the 1920s to the velvet control of the 1930s, to the gossip-drenched tragedies of the 1950s, Hollywood has always lived on contradiction, light and shadow, dream and disaster. It is what makes the story so enduring. And tonight, as your eyes grow heavier, you can let those images float in your imagination. The echo of a jazz band in a smoky club, the sweep of a searchlight across the sky, the hush of a velvet theater as the lights go down. Hollywood, the Babylon of dreams, still glimmers. Not in one decade or another, but in the collective dream of everyone who ever sat in the dark and surrendered to the glow. And that brings us to the end of tonight's story. I hope you found it calming. Maybe you learned something new, and maybe you're already drifting into sleep. If you enjoyed this, please like the video and subscribe to Sleepy School. It helps more people find these stories. And join us each night. I'd also love to hear from you. So let me know in the comments where in the world you're listening from tonight. For now, rest well, dream deeply, and I'll see you tomorrow night with another bedtime lecture. Good night.